Hey everyone, welcome back to Down Periscope Up Periscope. I'm Tim, your host, and today in this video we're going to specifically be looking at Blueback's library, or should I say libraries, because there's technically more than one. But currently I'm sitting here in the crew's mess. I am on the one of the outboard four-person tables here, and right above my head there in this cabinet is the ship's library. Now, I've written up a blog post where I've done some research on historical naval libraries and things like that. So again, there's lots more information and a lot more detail in that blog post, so you can read about it. A link is in the description down below, so check that out if you want. It's important to note that this submarine changed over time throughout its history, throughout its 31 years in service from 1959 to 1990. We're pretty sure that that is the original location of the ship's library. A submarine would have anywhere from maybe 150 to 200 volumes assigned to its library. That being said, whether or not that was always the case, that location right there is somewhat debatable. I talked to a former Barbell class sailor who served on the USS Barbell in the early 60s, and he doesn't really remember if there was ever a library in the crew's mess in this location here on his boat. But in talking to other submarine sailors who served obviously on different submarines, they said, yeah, the library was pretty much in this location on their submarine. The former Barbell sailor did tell me, however, that he does remember there being jukeboxes on the outboard end of these tables here where I'm sitting. And I recently found a photograph, and I'll put that up, showing you what does indeed appear to be a jukebox there. Now, I don't know what submarine that is from. It definitely looks like a B-Girl, a Barbell class submarine, but whether it's from the Barbell, the Blueback, or the Bonefish is unknown. What date it is, I don't know. There's no date on the photograph, but yeah, it appears there's a jukebox right there. Hey, go figure, yeah. But again, it all makes sense that the library would be here, there'd be other amenities here, because the crew's mess serves essentially as their living room. It's not only for eating, it's for training and meetings and free time and entertainment, even religious services if they had to hold them here. But this is where the crew would hang out when they're not on watch doing their job, or they're not doing something else like sleeping or doing maintenance or fixing things around the submarine. You would study here, you would just hang out. So it's essentially the social hub of the submarine. Now, other photographic evidence shows that this cabinet appears to have been different as well. It did not have just two of these doors here, but rather more. So again, I'm not entirely sure if they would store books in there. It might, I guess, but who knows? Now, regarding the books up there right now, I'm pretty sure most of them are probably not very original to the submarine. Some of them may be, but I'm willing to bet most of those books up there are just donated when Blueback became a museum in 1994. And one of them, in fact, I know, Tom Clancy's Act of Defiance, that big blue hardbound cover book, that is a very recent donation, because it's a very recent book. But a volunteer just donated that book for us, so we just put it there. But indeed, if you're not on watch, not doing anything, then you will find ways to make yourself useful. Because your day on any submarine, or any ship for that matter, is kind of basically you sleep, you eat, you're on watch doing your job, whatever that may be, and you spend your time off watch making yourself useful. And if you don't have anything to do, then all you have to do is just go to a chief and say, hey chief, I'm bored, I have nothing to do. Oh, I'm glad you asked. Come right here, come with me. I'll find a way to keep you entertained. And the chief will help you out. You quickly learn to find a way to make yourself busy. So a lot of sailors naturally read. Not all of them read, of course, but many do. Because particularly if you're on a submarine, you are cut off from the outside world. There is no outgoing communication once the submarine submerges. The only real communication with the submarine from the outside is tactical communication. Maybe every so often they'll come up to, a certain depth and raise up an antenna and get communications from on land, right? Your family gets, a couple of family grams to send you, during a patrol. That's like 50 words a message, and it turns into this funny word salad, where car broke down, dog sick, lawnmower stolen, or whatever, blah, 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 So this funny little word message that you get every so often from your family called a familygram. So that's really the only communication you have with the outside world. Apart from that, being on a submarine is essentially being stuck in a steel tube underwater for anywhere from weeks to months at a time with no contact from the outside world. You get no sunlight. You don't get fresh air. You have no internet. You have no social media, no screens in front of you to play with and things like that. So you learn to, entertain yourself or just be bored. And that's just the way it is, And it's that way on a lot of other ships, surface ships as well. So there's just not a lot of contact with the outside world. Not to mention even going back to like the days of sail, right? Where you're out on a ship, you might as well be on another planet for all they care. So yeah. The point is that sailors do a lot of reading. Not everyone, but many of them do. The barbell sailor also told me that a lot of the crew would actually bring books with them, of course, and they would just shove the books in the locker underneath their rack, as many as they could really fit in there realistically. So according to one document I've read, science fiction was really popular. So I've got Frank Herbert's Children of Dune here, part of the Dune series. Not really my favorite science fiction series of books, but I mean, So lots of adventure novels, I'm sure, science fiction, and the sailors would, of course, probably bring their own reading material, not all of it necessarily authorized by the Navy or of much educational or intellectual value, you might say. The raunchier, the better, but don't tell the chief. Now, if you're on a submarine, let's say you just got to a submarine and you're a non-qual, aka a nub, a puke, an oxygen stealer, you're not qualified, you don't have your dolphins, you're not going to be able to have free time to read. You're not going to be able to eat ice cream. You're not going to be able to watch movies and just chill out or whatever. So if you're sitting here just reading a book for pleasure or whatever, the others stood aghast at this, but still defiant. They knew what they had heard. Someone's going to snatch that book out of your hands and replace it with like a technical manual saying, that's what you need to be studying. Get rid of that. You need to be working on your quals. For the first 12 to 18 months or thereabouts that you're on a submarine and you're brand new to the crew, you're going to be working on your qualifications, right? You don't serve any other purpose and you need to get hot, as they say. So make yourself useful by studying a lot. You're going to have to learn every system on this boat, demonstrate a working knowledge of those systems, how they work, what they're powered by, what the buttons and knobs and switches and valves and the pipes and the wires do and all this stuff, So that takes a long time to learn. And that's what you're going to be learning before you even get a chance to read for pleasure, as it were. So that's pretty much the way it goes. Now, I managed to dig up a qualification sheet from a sailor on Blueback. He reported aboard in January of 1969, and in April of 1970, so a little over a year later, he was finally recommended to the commanding officer for being qualified on submarines, so he would have been awarded his dolphins. So I've been told for a submarine like Blueback, a qualification process would take the average sailor anywhere from about 9 to 12 months, give or take. I've heard some sailors on like the Barbell or even Blueback doing it in as little as like 50 or 60 some days, give or take, thereabouts. So, oh yeah, I managed to get qualified on this boat and, in like 64 days or whatever, okay. You're really dedicated and you're really fast, So obviously this sailor, it took him over a year to get qualified. So he was signed off on his final exam for his qualifications in late March of 1970. So it took him a little while, but he did it. Anyway, so just case in point, whether or not this is the original location of the library on Blueback is somewhat debatable. Most likely it was. For all we know, just the library could have amounted to just like a couple boxes of books and they're just shoved into a corner somewhere and no one ever touched them, for all we know, but who knows? Yeah. Let's say that, more than likely, let's say at the end of the service, this probably was the original location of the library. Now I'm going to take you to another spot on the submarine and we're going to look at another library on the submarine currently. Okay, so I'm standing right here in the main passageway. Those stairs right there beyond that door lead up to the control room. And right here, we have another library. This is actually the reference library for the crew on Blueback here. And when I say the crew, I mean like the tour guides. So we've compiled a whole bunch of books on like naval history and naval warfare. And of course, can't go anywhere without Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues, right? So we've got history books and some technical books and things like that. So this is just a sample of what we have here. Some classic, Silent Victory by Clay Blair. We got some Norman Friedman books on submarines, and of course a number of these are duplicates. So most of these books in this cabinet were donated to us from various places. So we don't think this cabinet was originally a library because it has a lock on it. There's no reason to lock up just, simple books or history books or whatever that you would read for pleasure. So more than likely this cabinet was just a storage locker for like chemicals or tools or something like that. So, because there's no reason to even have a lock on a normal library. Not a bad collection of books on submarines and submarine history and all that, but it's better than nothing. So, and a lot of us, when we have our free time, when we're not doing tours, we can access this library and we can read. And we currently just keep it locked because we don't want visitors coming in and taking the books and things like that. We don't even want visitors opening up cabinets and things like that. So a lot of the cabinets on Blueback currently are actually locked for a reason, because we're storing things in there. We don't want people opening them up and accessing whatever's in that cabinet. Anyway, this is what is our current cruise reference library. Again, probably not original to the submarine. At least we wouldn't store books in here, but this is currently being used to store books. Now, not to mention that, again, the crew would bring their own material. They would store their books in their lockers beneath their racks as well, however much they could fit in there. So that's where they would store books. There'd be a lot of other reference manuals and things like that stored in various shelves and cases throughout the submarine and in cabinets. There's going to be some copies of Jane's on the boat. There's going to be technical manuals and reference manuals and things like that for the crew to access that would be necessary when conducting operations on the submarine. And those would be stored all throughout the boat in various places wherever they would be needed. Technical manuals and so on and so forth. There is that. So this is just a small sample of what our current libraries on Blueback are. So the one in the cruise mess and the cruise reference library in this cabinet here at the bottom of the stairs leading from control.